Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting on one of humanity's greatest inventions, and they have absolutely no idea. You use it several times a day, every single day of your life. It is clean, private, and it makes an entire world of filth simply vanish with a single touch. For most of human history, making your waste disappear was one of civilization's most urgent and most unsolved problems. Around 4,000 years ago, the people of the Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-Daro were already building brick-lined drainage channels beneath their streets, carrying waste away from homes. Many of those dwellings had a dedicated alcove connected directly to the street drain, something remarkably close to what we would recognize as a toilet. The Romans pushed sanitation even further. Their great sewer, the Cloaca Maxima, had been draining the heart of Rome since the days of the early Republic. Across the Roman Empire, public latrines were social spaces, marble seats arranged side by side over channels of running water. Privacy was simply not the point. Romans used a communal sponge on a long stick, rinsed between uses in the water channel below. It was practical and, by the standards of the era, quite hygienic. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, much of its sanitation infrastructure collapsed with it. Europe spent the next 1,000 years making very different arrangements. In medieval Europe, most people used chamber pots and cesspits, or simply the nearest ditch. Cities were crowded, noisy, and almost unimaginably foul-smelling. Wealthier homes and castles had guardrobes, narrow closets built into thick walls, where a hole dropped waste down a chute into a pit or directly into the moat below. In some medieval towns, custom required people to shout a warning before emptying a chamber pot from an upstairs window into the street below. With no real separation between waste and the water supply, waterborne illness, dysentery, typhoid, cholera, was a near-constant presence in daily life for centuries. By the 16th century, European cities were growing faster than ever. The problem of waste was growing with them. Something had to change. Enter Sir John Harington, poet, courtier, and godson to Queen Elizabeth I. In 1596, this witty, frequently scandalous man published something remarkable. His pamphlet, The Metamorphosis of Ajax, Ajax being Elizabethan slang for a privy, was satirical in title but entirely serious in content. It described, in technical detail, a working water closet. Harrington's device used a cistern of water held above a seat, released by a valve that flushed waste down into a sealed pit below. It was crude, but it worked. Harrington built a working prototype at his estate in Kelston, Somerset, and reportedly installed one at Richmond Palace for the Queen herself to use. By some accounts, Elizabeth used the device and approved of it, but the design went nowhere. There were no sewers to connect it to, and the cost put it far beyond ordinary reach. Harrington's invention sat largely ignored for nearly 180 years. The concept was sound. The world around it simply wasn't ready. Then, in 1775, a Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Cumming walked into the London Patent Office and filed a patent for an improved water closet. One detail made all the difference. Cumming's crucial contribution was the S-shaped trap, a bent pipe beneath the toilet bowl that retained a pool of standing water after each flush. That trapped water acted as a seal, blocking sewer gases from rising back up through the pipe. Before Cumming's bend, even a flushing toilet breathed foul air directly back into the room. The S-bend has been standard in every flush toilet built since. It is one of those rare inventions so perfectly suited to its purpose that it has never needed to be replaced. In 1778, a Yorkshire-born inventor named Joseph Bramah improved on Cumming's design. adding a hinged flap valve at the base of the bowl that made each flush more reliable. Brahma began manufacturing his toilets commercially in London. By some accounts, he sold thousands of units before the end of the 18th century, though they remained expensive, bespoke items for wealthy buyers. Running water was not yet common in most homes. The flush toilet was, for now, a status symbol, something a duke might install, not a craftsman. And now we reach the most famous name in toilet history, and one of the most frequently misunderstood. Thomas Crapper was genuinely real. He was a skilled plumber and sanitary engineer who built a thriving business in London from the 1860s onward. Crapper did not invent the flush toilet, but he improved cistern mechanisms, held several legitimate plumbing patents, and did more than almost anyone to bring the water closet into ordinary British homes. His firm earned royal warrants, supplying sanitary fittings to the households of the Prince of Wales and later King Edward VII. American soldiers stationed in Britain during the First World War saw the name T. Crapper & Co. stamped on cisterns across the country, and the association, it seems, made a lasting impression. Whether the word crap actually derives from Thomas Crapper's name is genuinely contested. Most etymologists believe the word predates him, but the legend proved far too good to die. Crapper's tale is entertaining, but the flush toilet's real transformation happened not inside the bathroom, but beneath the streets. By the 1850s, London was the largest city on Earth, home to more than 2 million people, nearly all of whose waste drained, more or less directly, into the River Thames. In the summer of 1858, a prolonged heat wave struck the city. The Thames, brimming with raw sewage, began to emit a smell so extreme that Parliament itself could barely function. Lime-soaked curtains were hung over the windows of the Houses of Parliament to mask the stench. It barely helped. The newspapers named the crisis the Great Stink. Parliament, for once personally afflicted by the consequences of urban filth, moved with remarkable speed. They commissioned an engineer to solve the problem once and for all. That engineer was Joseph Bazalgette, chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works. What he designed and built between 1859 and 1875 would define London for generations. Bazalgette constructed over 80 miles of large brick intercepting sewers beneath the streets of London, more than had ever been attempted in any city before. Those main tunnels connected to over 1,000 miles of smaller local sewers, a vast underground network that collected waste from across the entire city and carried it eastward. To build the main riverside sewer, Bazalgette reclaimed land from the Thames itself, constructing the Victoria, Albert, and Chelsea embankments, landmarks that still define central London today. The system used gravity to channel sewage to massive pumping stations at the eastern edges of the city, where it could be safely discharged into the tidal Thames. The effects were striking. Cholera, which had devastated London in successive outbreaks through the 1830s, 40s, and 50s, largely disappeared from the city in the decades that followed. London's sewer network became a template for the industrializing world. Paris, New York, Chicago, all built similar systems over the following decades, each carrying the same life-saving logic underground. As municipal water mains and sewer connections spread, the flush toilet ceased to be a luxury. By the early 20th century, new homes in British and American cities were routinely built with indoor plumbing. The iconic Victorian image, the high wooden cistern, the pull chain, the white porcelain bowl became the standard form for decades, balancing reliability with a certain spare elegance. When you flush a modern toilet, water from the cistern drops rapidly into the bowl, creating a siphon that pulls waste down through the S-bend and into the drain below. The cistern refills automatically via a float valve, a small buoyant device that rises with the water level until it closes the inlet, stopping the flow precisely when the tank is full. No electricity, no microchips, just the weight of water and the geometry of bent pipes, an invention assembled piece by piece over 2 centuries that has never fundamentally needed to change. Modern engineering has focused on efficiency. Dual flush systems, introduced widely in the late 20th century, let users choose between a smaller and a larger flush, cutting water use dramatically per household. At the far end of the innovation spectrum, Japanese manufacturers have produced toilets with heated seats, integrated bidets, automatic lids, deodorizers, and ambient music, elevating a daily necessity into something close to an art form. But here is the part of the story that is hardest to sit with. Even today, by estimates from public health researchers, a significant portion of the global population lacks access to safe sanitation of any kind. Since 2011, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has funded the Reinvent the Toilet Challenge, seeking designs that can provide safe sanitation without sewers or running water. In other words, the problem that Harrington tried to solve in 1596, how to handle human waste safely, affordably, and privately, remains unsolved for vast numbers of people on Earth today. What began as a courtier's experiment in a Somerset garden, refined by a Scottish watchmaker, improved by a Yorkshire inventor, and scaled by a London engineer, is now infrastructure that billions depend on daily. The flush toilet is not simply a convenience. It is a public health technology, one that, wherever it functions, quietly interrupts the chain of disease that killed people for centuries. The porcelain bowl you sit on carries 4,000 years of human ingenuity, political crisis, engineering ambition, and hard-won medical understanding. None of it visible, all of it working. You never think about it. That, perhaps, is the truest measure of how completely it has succeeded. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.